everybody. As you can see, it's just me. Andre and I have been emailing each other all morning, and he wanted to come on and practice with me before we did the show. And then the time he said that he wanted to practice with me is the time he's supposed to be in the show. So if you hear my phone ring, it's Andre calling me, telling me he finally figured it out. If not, we'll have Andre back another day. But I don't think that, I think he'll make it through. I've had a lot of, when you work with people outside of the time zone you live in, it always gets a bit tricky. And I've been reading all of the chats and reading what people are writing about. And Vicki, I'll figure out a way for you for Saturday. Um, we're going to do it. I'm going to do the class again this Saturday because even when I'm not involved with another host, I have my garden party and I forgot, I sent out the invitation and I forgot to attach the link. And the three people who realized that we didn't have a link um, got a hold of me early enough in the day by email, and I got them the link and I sent it out to everybody else. But I think most other people were just frustrated and didn't show up. So we had a lovely garden party. And if you don't know, garden parties are for people who own my garden and want to learn how to read them. And so we practice on each other and we go over basic information we've all figured out. And everybody can bring in a question they would like read. Or sometimes I gather up questions that showed up in the chat during the week that I could never get to. And I'm watching my emails, guys. I don't know where Andre is. We have a fascinating show. If we have the show, it's really fascinating. There's a thing called a yod, and I guess I didn't save the banner I created for it. Anyway, a yod it's called the finger of God, and what it is it's two planets that are at a sextile to each other. Like one planet will be in Libra and one planet will be in Leo at the same degree, say 16 of each of those. And then directly across from the two of them, if you make a big triangle, is the point of the yod. If you and the reason I know about them, hi Danny, the reason I know about them is I was going through an astrology program called Astromatrix that I have on my phone, and I was just sitting somewhere bored and reading through things, and it said patterns, my birth chart, and it said patterns, and when you open it up, it tells you if you have a stellium, which is, excuse me, allergies here. It's stellium is where you have three or more planets in one sign, and then and it has grand triangles and minor triangles, and explains what all those mean and what gives you a little more depth in your own chart. Well, anyway, I found this thing called a yod, and I happen to have one. So I started going through. I keep a notebook of an electronic notebook of my friends' charts, and I started looking, and two of my closest friends both have two yods. And when you read about yods, it's like, yeah, it's kind of fun. We're actually in the middle of two yods in the current planets right now. And they take the inner, I hope I'm not gonna, anyway. Say the ones that we have currently, the two planets that are 60 degrees from each other are Pluto, which is at 29 degrees of Capricorn, and Neptune, which is at 29 degrees of Pisces. So they're near each other. And then what they're pointing at is Venus in Leo. And what the theory on it is, and I wish Andre was here because I know he knows it better than I do, but the theory is that the power from those two planets, they're kind of working in sync with each other, and they're working with the planet that is at the point. And I'm not altogether sure all the time how to interpret that stuff, but I was looking at the one for today where we have Pluto and Neptune conjoining, basically sextiling each other, and then pointing up to Venus. Well, since Pluto's the thing that rakes up old crap and sort of makes things new, and Neptune's the dreamer and the thing that's illusions, I would think today would not be a day to fall in love. Aha. Hold for a second. Hey, Andre.
Hey there. So yeah, you want to check this out to see what it does, because the last 2 times that I did it, it was pretty disastrous.
Okay, well, come on in and we'll see where it goes. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Okay, let's see. So hold on while I have you on the line here.
Okay.
You said you want me to do the previous link, right?
Yeah, the first one. The one that's going, the one that is actually live right now. Just in truth in advertising, you're on my computer right now. They can hear this conversation.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. So,
oh, they're aware of technical flaws when they deal with my channel. Believe me.
so it's the which one? Tuesday. Okay, where's the one that you sent me?
If you want me to send it, I can send it again right now. I'm looking at the link sender.
No, hold on.
Okay.
Let me be able to find it. So is it the one that ends in 5Q?
Hold for a second. Let me go look.
Well, the one that you had sent.
The first one.
Right, the first one. Okay, let me write that here.
It ends up with 5Q. You're right. It ends up with 5Q.
5Q?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was the other one? Did you just change it, or?
I sent you one that wouldn't go out. This one will go out. This one will broadcast.
Okay, so entering the hold on. So, yeah. So settings.
It's car. Oh, just push that little link.
Okay, so I'm going to push the Enter Studio.
There you are. You're here. I see you.
Okay, so
I'm going to add you to my stream right now.
Okay, so do you see what's happening? The video is it's slow.
Is it slow? I don't know. It doesn't seem slow to me on my end. It's echoing because I'm on the phone with you. So I need to cut you off, but I think it looks okay here.
See, I'm talking.
And your mouth's not moving.
I don't see my mouth moving. No.
That's interesting. There you are.
And this happened with 2 different people in the last while. So let me hang up here and we'll talk on StreamYard. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah. So the problem is my voice is fine, but the video is really low quality. And I don't know what the problem is because my computer is fine. Let's see. I mean, it's Zoom. There are 2 other things open in Zoom. I'll close them. No, I don't know. It still does the same thing.
The chat's all saying you look wonderful and they can hear you just fine.
Right, but I'm not in sync.
I know. I mean, I don't know what to tell you about that. I know that you're coming in on the fastest kind of computer line you can in the US because my daughter, Susan, the computer security encryption specialist, she has this house so locked down and we have the very best connections.
Yeah, well, so do I.
Yeah, but somehow it doesn't make it through StreamYard that way. I'll write a long note complaining to StreamYard.
Yeah, I have no idea. Anyways, the only thing with this is like when you're looking at me, then there's no lag. You're seeing it properly.
Yes.
So that means the video you're going to create will be like that, right?
It should be.
Well, if it's like that, then I mean, as long as the people watching are okay with it, and yeah, I mean, I don't.
They're not worried at all. One person said it's a little like watching a 1960 Godzilla movie.
How so?
Well, they used to be made in Japan, and so all the actors would be talking, and then their words would be second. But people's brains handle that better than we think.
Okay. Well, if So then the logic would be that when you post the video, because you'll post it afterwards as well
No,
as
it's going out live right now.
right. But afterwards, do you put it on your channel or not?
No, it just goes out and then it stays out there. It just posts.
Yeah, as a like the live post becomes a recorded
Right.
post. Okay. So in other words, my question is, when I'm looking at this right now, I'm completely out of sync. Is that what the video is going to show, or is the video going to show me in sync?
It shows you're really close to being in sync.
Really close, but not quite. Okay.
Not quite.
All right. Well, let's just do it. What I'll do is I'll reboot my computer completely, and I will see if that might make a difference. I don't know. It's Chrome though, right? Chrome is what is
Yeah,
what
that's when they put Chrome on things, it really messes the world up. Unless it's just like you don't want to go ahead with it. People are telling me in the chat that they're following you. They have you might be a little bit off, but I hate to tell you, Andre, as much as I would like to think people stare at their YouTube screens wanting to see my smiling face, I'm very aware that a lot of them are washing dishes and doing laundry and taking care of business. And Pam Cake says it's in sync for her.
Right. So then the whole point though is that it's probably out of sync for me for some reason, and I don't totally know what the reason is. But all right, so we'll just we'll do it. Yeah. Let me reboot my computer and I'll log on and we'll go for it. And
right. You're gonna cut out and come back?
Yeah, I'll come back because
okay.
Aren't we supposed to start at noon my time?
We're on when we're supposed to be on. 1 o'clock my time, 11 o'clock your time.
That's not what I had. Okay, am I confused at that? I entered it in my calendar at noon.
No, it was when I sent you the invite. It was to be on right now. I mean, I get into those time mix-ups all the time. I mean, it's kind of a mess. One woman says she's busy cleaning her cat box, so she's not looking at us.
She's not looking at us. Okay. Well, let me just give me 5 minutes. And
okay.
I'll
just vamp. And I was beginning to explain what yods kind of are, but I really want you to tell us.
Okay.
We've got 50 some people watching us.
All right. Let me just reboot. It'll be no more than 5 minutes, and I'll be
okay.
Back
Fine, Andre. Thank you.
Right.
Danny, I bet you it's because he's beyond the trailer park. That's Danny's problem. He's at the tail end of all cable coming into his place. Okay, we're explaining about yods. So yods we're in the middle of 2 yods right now. Today, we have, if you can kind of picture a wheel, and I don't have all the little cute things astrologers have to show you wheels. But currently, we have Pluto in Capricorn, Neptune in Pisces. They're at the bottom, and they're pointing up to Venus, which is in Leo. And it makes this pointy little finger, and they call it the finger of God. And today, the other finger of God. Are we blessed or what? We've got Neptune is in Pisces at 27 degrees. Pluto's in Capricorn at 29 degrees. And they're pointing right at Mars, which is right next to Venus, except Venus is in Leo and Mars is in Virgo. So we got 2 fingers of God's. And one of the theories, and we'll straighten this out with Andre when he gets here, is that the 2 bottom planets, which in this case, I said, is Neptune, which my impression of Neptune is always illusions, delusions, fog, and kind of mystifying things. And Pluto, which is digging stuff up, moving things around, changing things. And so they're pointing at Mars. That would mean that those 2 planets were affecting how your energy goes, because Mars is energy and Venus is love and emotions. So this is a day to not fall in love and not take on some extremely important project, because at the base of it, if you go with the yod theory, is that you're not going to be seeing things clearly, and you're not going to be seeing clearly with matters of the heart, with Venus being there. Like I said, I have a yod on my chart, and how I was taught when I learned astrology, and I know just enough astrology to be dangerous. So don't ask me to draw your chart. Um, when I got my, when I found my yod, um, their Saturn's in Leo, and Uranus is in Gemini, and Saturn is, the taskmaster, and Uranus is always big change. And they both point right to my Jupiter, which is in Aquarius. It's at 1 degree of Aquarius. And what I learned in my life was that if you find out you've got a yod in your chart, you can you look at the point where the point goes. So in my case, the point is Jupiter, that's in Aquarius at 1 degree. And when planets move over that, it can bring big changes. And in one day, the time we went, if you know about the 200-year cycle where Jupiter and Saturn meet, they met in Earth for 200 years. Every 4 years, they would meet in an Earth sign planet, except once they met in Libra in 1980, and that was the beginning of the computer revolution. And that's because Libra's air, and air is thought. So the next time that they broke out of that 200-year cycle, it was a January. It was when 1 degree into Aquarius a couple of years ago. And I remember I walked out because you could see it in the sky. You could see at least Jupiter, you could see. And you could see it where they told you to look. And that's where they were conjoining. And now they will meet in air for the next 200 years. And if you look back on the patterns of big universal patterns, when they went into the earth signs, it's when we started the Industrial Revolution and everybody started moving out of the cities and moving into really making things. And if you think about what earth signs do, I'm an earth sign, I'm a Taurus. We make things, we build things. And if they're Virgo, the Taurians create the thing and build sort of the first prototypes. Virgo takes that prototype and makes it absolutely perfect. And then Capricorn markets it and sells it for more money than Taurus could have ever imagined it would go for. So that because Capricorn's where you finish putting things together like that. So we're out of that cycle and we're into air. And the lead into air this time was into the new computer. And that's when I remember the first time I heard about that cycle. I was 19. I was taking a free university course, which was on the university I was at. I was not going to university for free, but they had courses at night on stuff you might just be interested in. And I took one on astrology, and my professor stood up there and he said, "I won't live to see this, but you will." And he explained this 200-year cycle. And he said, even if you're 19 now, you'll be 71, 72 when this happens, and you may be alive to see it. And the night it happened, I walked out to see it because I had been told this is what was happening. And I just wanted to go out and look and see. Here he comes.
All right.
Hi, Andre.
Hi. It still lags, but that's fine. I don't know why. I mean, nothing going on my computer at all. This is a total mystery. And by the way, it never used to do this. When I go back prior to the last two before this one, it wasn't doing it. So I'll have to research it and see what's going on.
Well, I'll research from my end because at the end of each show, YouTube foolishly says, StreamYard foolishly says, "Was this show great?" And normally I'll say it was fine, it was fine, it was fine.
Say no.
They're going to get this show wasn't great.
No, and it's a bit inexplicable because I cannot imagine what's going. Maybe something happened to my Chrome. You know how sometimes Chrome adds things. I may have done something inadvertently, but whatever I did, I know going back a couple of months, it was not doing this. Anyway, it's fine because at least the audio is good. So let's.
The audio is great.
Yeah, so
it's just like you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What I was explaining to them was the thing you and I discussed at the last time we met, which is yods.
Uh-huh.
And I was explaining to them that I have a yod in my chart, but today in particular, we have 2 yods in the sky.
Mm. Okay. And what were you saying?
I
What
was
was your
saying that my understanding from my Weasley Little Astrology course I took years ago was that the 2 planets that are at the base of the yod, the 2 that are closest together, Pluto's in Capricorn at 29 degrees, Neptune's in Pisces at 29 degrees, and they're both pointing to Venus that's in Leo at 26 degrees.
Mhm.
Okay, that's one of the 2. The other one are Neptune and Pluto, like they are at 29 degrees, but they're pointing at Mars, which is in Virgo at 1 degree. And my understanding from my Weasley course, and if you say it's not true, Helen won't be offended because she's on the other side now. The 2 base planets are kind of trying to work their their energy together because they're sextile each other, but they're pointed up at the apex planet, and the
Mhm.
apex planet can either be helped or hurt by these planets. Is that anything close to true?
Well, the thing is that there are 2 levels to this, because one is it's in the sky now, so then you can try to say something about that. You could say
Mm-hmm.
in this period, particularly because Venus, the planet that is doing the upper end of the yod,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that planet is retrograding from this in this.
That's true. Neptune's retrograde.
Oops, what happened to the video now?
Now you slowed down and now you sped up.
Okay, so is the voice still okay?
Yeah, your voice is fine.
Okay, so the Venus at late Leo, typically it would be there a day or 2 and then it moves, but in this case
Mm-hmm.
it's there longer, right?
Yes.
Because of the fact that it's stationing. So as a result, it extends the effect of the yod. And really, the only thing I can think of right now in world conditions that has that yod-like feeling, because the yod is 2 150s. There's a sextile between Pluto and Neptune, and then they both 150 the Venus, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's called an inconjunct or a quincunx.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like that aspect. That aspect is problematic and often dangerous to health and connects to injury and things like that. And when I look at world conditions right now, probably what is going on with Ukraine and this, you hear Biden making statements like Putin has lost the war, and you can imagine Putin being really angry about this. And there's some danger there that I could see
Yeah.
potentially erupting on a yacht situation like this. But I am much more familiar with what yachts do in the personal charts. If these things happen to link to you in some way
Mm-hmm.
in your chart, and that's where, for example, it's where we see in Trump's chart his ascendant is 29 degrees Leo. It's right where Venus is at this point.
Oh, okay.
So that yod pattern puts Neptune and Pluto in his chart in a very vulnerable place, because Neptune is in his 8th, which is a very tricky house. It rules death and injury and all kinds of things that you don't want planets there if possible, particularly in a yod. And Saturn, no, sorry, that's Neptune, right? And Pluto is in Capricorn in his health house. So you've got the 2 most dangerous houses triggering a planet on the ascendant. So this is where, in the personal chart of that individual, this is a very risky yod to be under at the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
then if a person realizes that in their chart something similar is happening, well, that's going to be a lot more meaningful, that particular yod at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And then separately, we can talk about what they mean, what yods mean and so forth. You pointed out that, how did you put it? That the top planet, what does it, the way you
The
put it was
apex. The apex. The
the
one
apex
that's
planet. Right. So, and the apex planet, I mean, I don't know so much about the apex planet as that that's where the action in the yod is more likely to be something going through there. If someone has a yod in their chart, if something connects to the apex planet, then that's when it happens. And I would not be particularly prone to saying it would be a good thing. I think yods, I don't know what your interpretation is. I'd rather not have a yod. To tell you the truth, I'd rather not. Like, the best thing that can happen to you with a yod is if you're a really spiritually committed person. In fact, I did a thing in my class on Sunday where I showed the best yod and the worst yod. So there was this spiritual teacher in India, Meher Baba. He had, I think, a couple of yods in his chart, and he was so spiritually driven. At the age of 25, I think it was, he stopped talking. He never talked again, and he talked only by writing things in a little tablet. And he had a big following. He had a very in-depth spiritual teaching, etc. Very accomplished. However, even he had not one, but I think two car accidents, and you can see the car connection in his chart as well. Pretty bad car accidents that left him injured, which is what I've noticed about the 150 in my life is multiple times I've had injuries when planets like Saturn, Neptune get in the yod, right? But now you can see, though, where's the yod really powerful spiritually? Because if you do a natural yod and you put the apex planet at 0 Aries, and then you go to 0 Virgo, 0 Scorpio, you link the health house, the death house, and the rising house. And so the yod is very good for spiritual work, working on yourself, constantly trying to get better at it, transforming yourself. 6th and 8th house patterns, great for that. And arguably, that's why they call it the finger of God, by the way. That's the finger of God is a yod, basically. The 150 is what is.
Yeah, I think they gave it the most evil name they could figure. The finger God's going to come get you.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, but although it's supposed to be that, I think the intent is, it's the idea that there is a transcendent something that knocks on your door and expresses through you. But here's the problem, right? That's Meher Baba, great spiritual chart, whatever else you can say about it. The other chart I showed was this unbelievably awful, brutal serial killer who was just beyond evil, and he had multiple yods, like in his chart. Everything was yod, everything else. I mean, there were yods there were planets that were in 2 yods, doing one thing in 1 yod. And anyways, this guy was unbelievably corrupt, to the moon type thing. And so that's the other side of that, which is incredibly destructive. The other pattern, by the way, this is an aside, but there's a pattern that you can make if you put 2 planets, I believe it's in 2 planets that are square, and then you make a sesqui square to both. And that's called the finger of the world, in the sense that it's a very material, very driven energy that seeks to, has ambition and seeks to move forward. And that was the guy that founded EST, Werner Erhard. He had a finger.
Yeah.
But that's a different pattern. It's not a yod. So I just say that as an aside, where you can see these triangles in the sky, and a yod. I mean, compare a yod to a grand trine, for example. I mean, totally different energy. And I would rather have the grand trine. I'll just say that.
No, grand trine would make it easier.
It's there's always 2 sides to everything. The grand trine's weakness is that a person can become, it's too easy almost. So then the person becomes, say it's a grand trine in water, you can get an individual that is very emotionally self-assured, but then you start to listen and you realize, I think this person maybe shouldn't be as assured as they are. They're not quite as, connected as they think they are, but they believe they are because of the grand trine. Still, though, that to me is benign and easy compared to the karma of a yod. And then you have to study it by seeing when planets go through there, what happens, right?
Yeah, that's what I was taught, was the important thing is to know, where does my apex on my chart is at 1 degree of Jupiter. 1 degree of Aquarius, where Jupiter was at the apex.
So wait, so tell me that again. The apex is Jupiter?
My apex is at 1 degree of Aquarius. It's Jupiter, and the two grounding planets, the two bottom of the yod, are Saturn in Leo and Uranus in Gemini.
So Leo, and the Jupiter is in what sign again?
Jupiter's in Aquarius, 1 degree.
Yeah, but you said Saturn is in Leo.
Oh,
That
yeah,
doesn't.
Saturn's in Leo and Uranus is in Gemini.
So what are the degrees of Saturn?
The degree of Saturn is 29 degrees, and degrees of Gemini is 27.
So to 1 degree Aquarius, so Leo would be to it'd be the Capricorn. Oh, I see. It's because it's an out of sign yod, but it's still a
Right,
yod.
it's an out of sign yod.
Okay, and what was your rising again?
Scorpio
Scorpio.
at 28 degrees.
So the Aquarius is in your Scorpio. It's at the bottom of the chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and what have you experienced? For example, what happened when Saturn went through there in
That was
2021?
That was 2021. I don't remember any of those days really hurting me. The only one I remember where I watched the planets go through 1 degree of Aquarius is when Jupiter and Saturn met there to begin the age of air, after us having been Earth for 200 years.
Okay. Well, what happened? How did you deal with? Because Saturn went through there when the pandemic, right around the lockdown. Saturn was in, and it hung around those degrees. It triggered that massively.
Oh, I know. Well,
so
what happened to me, I was told by my guides as I drove home from work one night, you're going home and you're not leaving your house for a long time. And that's exactly what I did. They tell me to go home, I go home.
And how did it feel?
Actually, it was very liberating, because sometimes being around people when I'm being open and sensitive is painful.
So you recall March, April, May of 2021 of 2020 as, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Well, then your yacht is working quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because the thing there would be that there you're getting a pretty massive trigger of that on the Saturn goes through the Jupiter, turns on the yod, so then if you can say, well, I just adapted and things worked out well, there were no health things, nothing like that, then it's fine. Although it sounds though like, because it's 29, you still have Pluto over there, right?
Yeah.
And you're
Pluto's been sitting on my ass for 2 years.
But you've been okay with that too.
I just say, okay, keep pushing. You can't be worse than ex-husbands.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's if what the yacht is doing is you have planets there and you're basically in some manner working on yourself, tuning in, tuning into spirit. That's the maximum the yacht can give. That is the benign side of finger of God. The idea of spirituality. That's great. That's great, because it means you're in a period where you're immune, at least to the downside of it. It's like that, and in that way, I would consider it positive, right? It's the idea of Meher Baba. His teaching was great. You can read his stuff, and you realize, yes, this person is channeling some really amazing energy. And he probably would have said to me, "Yeah, you have no idea how much work I was doing, to reach this, what I had to go through."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to always watch out for the quiet ones.
Yeah.
Okay, I have 2 friends that I follow their charts for them. They also have yods, but both of them have 2 yods in their chart.
Okay.
And one of them, her yod, her apex is in Capricorn at 25 degrees, and she has a yod that's a Venus in Leo and a Jupiter in Gemini. That's 1 yod. And her second yod is Pluto in Leo and Jupiter in Gemini. And the other thing I can tell you about her is her numerology, if you know much about numerology at all, her birthday, her lifeline, her spirit line, her soul line, and her outer world line are all nines.
Wow. Okay. Well, nine is a very spiritual number too. A
Yeah,
very, at
she
least the way
is.
I interpret it. It's a
Hmm.
yeah. It's that in astrology too, by the way, because the nine in astrology, if you want to experience the nine, just track planets in transit when they're 40 degrees from each other, which is 1/9 of the circle.
Hmm.
It's an unmistakable feeling of ease and connection. And I remember it always sticks in my mind that I typically find new moons kind of dead, and the new moon energy is flat compared to the full moon energy is more vibrant. And
Hmm.
it's why in the Vedic system, they have festivals and celebrations on the full moon. And say in the Tibetan astrology, they tell you flat out new moons are demonic, and you think they're not good at all. But I remember years ago, I could see a new moon coming up it was in Leo, a new moon in Leo that was ninth harmonic to my sun. And I thought, I bet that'll feel pretty good. And sure enough, the new moon comes and I'm sitting in meditation, all blissed out. It's as though everything just came together because I hadn't been doing particularly good meditation, but that day, and I thought this is the ninth harmonic. So nine feels really good. Uh, I just took a big detour to your story. So let's
That,
go
no,
back to
that's fine because she needs to hear that because when she does trust her own inner instincts, she does really well. But when she decides she's going to make it go another way, and she's gotten old enough, she's like me, she's gotten old enough, she's given up on that.
giving up on which.
Pushing things.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. And I mean that's the thing that's the paradox, by the way, that if someone talks about trusting instincts and not pushing, the idea is to not make effort. But you hear this a lot from some really great teachers. They'll say the solution is to make no effort. What they don't tell you is how much effort they had to make in order to make no effort. So
Yeah.
in other words, the idea is if you can't let go, then practice letting go. This is the teaching of Saturn. Saturn always says, well, if you don't know how to do it, keep trying until you do. Eventually you'll discover how to be more at ease. But until that stage is reached, don't expect it to come to you, like all of a sudden, oh yeah, now I can do it.
Well,
Unlikely, unless you join the fray, and practice.
maybe that's why COVID didn't bother me so much because it certainly took everything out of my way. What am I going to push against?
Yeah, true. That's true. Yeah, yeah. That's and that the thing is, in your case, it's low down on the chart, so that's the private place for a person, fourth house, where they live. There's a
Hmm.
sense that that's your particular cocoon, and
Hmm.
just being with that is great because that's your root. When people
Hmm.
talk about go to your source, go to your
Hmm.
origins, that has a lot of fourth house qualities to it. It's where you emerge from. It's both your past and your original birth. So cooperating with it, yeah, great idea, because you feel at peace. And the interesting thing is when you do that, you probably notice your ability to read things improve too, because then the energy moves through you, instead of being blocked by anxieties and that kind of thing. I just saw
Exactly.
some philosopher, I don't know where I saw this, where it said depression is focusing on the past, anxiety is focusing on the future, and peace of mind is focusing on where you are in the present.
That's
Right?
right.
Yeah.
And when you've got nothing but the present, I mean, that's
Yeah,
what you got.
that's right. Good for you, because the pandemic, the thing you most read about is how so many people had trouble with the isolation and with the all of that. And curious that in your case too, the Jupiter's in Aquarius, so you'd think the standard thing with you, well, Saturn lands on that, and Aquarius is your socializing with people, and yet it didn't bother you. You probably did it online, right? Is that what happened? You joined the
Well, also, you remember, I live in a house with two of my grown children. So it's not like I was alone, alone. Like I would talk to people who were alone, alone. And I've never been alone.
Mhm. Right. So then you're an example of someone who is having it both ways.
Yeah, they
Good for
leave
you.
me alone because they've talked to mom enough. I mean,
Right.
in their 30s and 40s, so they've
Right.
heard pretty much everything. If you guys think I repeat stories to you, you ought to be here. And my daughter just leaned through the door, going, "Oh, mom."
Yeah.
Um, But anyway, if yods are just one of those weird, funny things you can maybe learn something from, maybe not, you know?
Yeah, no. Well, the thing is that, in a way, the adage, or the book title, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. There's a sense that
Hmm.
you always want to be exploring how these things work, and so it's why I always say to people, if you want to know astrology, you got to track it, because, for example, the moon makes you odds throughout the
Hmm.
month, two planets. The
Hmm.
question is, how does it feel? And you try to grow in your understanding by feeling the energy of it. The reason I sound a little negative, or a lot negative, is I do notice not so much the yod, but the inconjunct, the 150.
Oh,
That
yeah.
aspect, that aspect shows up so much when something difficult, like, for example, that submersible, that
Yes.
went down. So not only was I only have one chart to work with there, and not even the entire chart, just the day chart of one of the billionaires.
Hmm.
And you look at that chart, and any astrologer would have said, "Don't get in that thing. Do not." In fact, then you would say, and plus, since I'm telling him not to get into it, maybe all you other guys,
Maybe
if you're all
just
doing
send a
it,
message.
don't do it. So not only did he have squares and oppositions that were extremely dangerous, there was this 150 that Pluto was making. And you
Hmm.
see this again and again when something of that nature, a life ending, problematic thing. But uh, at the same time, when you think of it from the spiritual side, you could say, to give you an example, I've been working through not a yod, a 150 involving Uranus.
Hmm.
And what I noticed is that it inclined me to do a lot of I started to look at a lot of techniques, because Uranus is very astrology oriented. It's a
Hmm.
planet that tries to expand the language. And all of a
Hmm.
sudden, I started getting obsessed with measuring and counting, and I was looking back, and I did discover a couple of new things that are very, very interesting. So you see where there's something productive in the 150 as well, right? And so I have to thank it for that.
Okay, I'm going to put up a comment someone put up. She wants me to show. No, that's not Sharon's site. Okay. Rose Blue. What's going on here? Political charts? No, Rose. I only do politics on Sunday with Scott. And we're not, I mean, if it happens to be something we can relate it to, but we're talking really, I guess one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this is because people always go, oh, it's so confusing. I can't remember it all and blah, blah, blah. Like my friend with the two yods that I spoke with this morning. And I said, if you know your own chart, and they're just things you pick out that interest you to watch. It's like it's part of what you found it with Uranus being on your shoulder. My astrology used to explain the 150 as something that your neck can't quite turn around enough to see, but it's there. And so you keep trying to figure out what it is. And she said that's what quincunxes were to her. They were just knocking on the door saying, I'm here. But if you know where things are, some stuff on your chart, you said I think I saw a show where you're talking about how you went back and you looked at the Venus progressions and how they worked in your life. Was that you?
Right. Okay. So the Venus progressions, this is a totally separate topic, but the Venus cycle is an 8-year cycle. So wherever
Hmm.
Venus is today, if you look in the ephemeris, 8 years later, it returns to the exact same spot, because in between, if you go year by year, it's not in the same place as, like, say, right now. You look at today, you look a
Hmm.
year from now, it's somewhere else. Then the next year after that, somewhere else. But if you go 8 years later, it's almost in the same spot. The reason it's not quite exact is because it's just under 8 years, the amount of time that it takes Venus to return. But
Hmm.
as a result of the work of this astrologer, what inspired me is this Nick Dagan Best. He's done a lot of work on Venus, and I started to look and dug into my own chart. Usually, if I see a technique and it doesn't affect me, I won't trust it. I need a technique to show me something in me. Otherwise I'll say,
Hmm.
well, what's the? But sure enough, I looked, and I thought, yeah, this is pretty good. I looked at my life in 8-year intervals, and it was actually pretty spooky when I looked at what was happening in those years. But that was the product, to my understanding, at least in large measure, the way Uranus went into a yod to my Saturn. The idea Saturn is what, in a way, is what I already know. Saturn is my structure, philosophy. This is what I got, right? And the Uranus comes in and says, well, that's not quite right. You could adjust it a little bit, right? You could add something here. And so that's one of the results that I now have incorporated that into when I interpret charts, where before I wasn't really adding that factor. So, for example, one of the things that it can connect you to is that people's lives, age 16, 24, 32, 40, those are very often relationship connected years, where in one of the statistical things out there, if you do your research, is that the average length of relationships is 8 years. Relationships tend to end at the 8-year mark. And one of the things that I noticed in mine was one of those, precisely. Starts on the Venus thing, ends when it at the 8-year mark, it starts to really unravel. So, but all of that is to say that I got into that. I credit the Uranus 150 to the Saturn, because I could feel my mental activity, trying to work it out, trying to somehow figure it out. And so, even though I guess from what you're saying it's the sense of not seeing it clearly. Yeah, because it's an aspect that is, in fact, it's sometimes people call it the aspect of adjusting something, adjusting something that's off. And to me, that fits. For example, if you do a yod and you say natural yod is 0 Aries, 0 Virgo, 0 Scorpio, that's the natural yod. Well, Virgo is the health sign, and that's when you go to the doctor. Why? Because you got to adjust something, like a chiropractor. Let's put it back to where it was, and it's in a way a never-ending task, because you adjust it today. You go to the dentist, you think everything is fine. A few years pass, and then they got to adjust it again. It's never perfect, right? So it has that quality as well. But again, very useful though. This is the thing with astrology is if you don't look for ways to make things positive and useful, your head will explode, because you'll start looking around for all the problems and you'll find them. And it's not a good thing. If someone has a really difficult something, whatever it is, a yod, a Saturn opposite, whatever, the logic is figure out what to do with it, turn it into a strength, in other words, rather than have it be a liability. Yeah. And especially don't tell people the reason I'm this way is because something opposes my something. That's not good logic. That's
that's given you as a warning sign. This could be true for you. But it only if you decide to create it into the reality. I go crazy when I have parents tell me, oh, well, my kid's a Pisces, and rolls her eyes like that explains everything. Trust me, I have 2 of them, and they couldn't be more different.
Exactly. No, and this is again, totally different topic, but it's the topic where astrology, the signs, the planets, they're not, they're arranged. They're not a fixed thing. So there's no such thing. Oh, that's Jupiter. Jupiter has a high and a low end. Every single thing has harmony, disharmony together. So, for example, Jupiter is the most benefic, expansive energy on the high end. On the low end, it's an indulgent, arrogant type of energy. It's the idea of focus on the archetype of expansion and think of where expansion is good and where expansion is not so good, right? Indulgence is excessive expansion, excessive pleasure, excessive anything. So obviously the idea is to go to the high end, to protect yourself, to thrive and so forth. And you see this a lot in the behavior of people, especially in politics and with signs, with planets. When you mention Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. So one way to interpret it is it's the final act of the soul. The soul travels from Aries and goes around. When you reach Pisces, what I notice is the most spiritual people are there, and the biggest crooks and most corrupt souls. And that's why Pisces rules monasteries and prisons. Which way do you want to go, right? And then everywhere, in between too, because not everybody will, this person is monastery, this person is prison. There are layers. Some people maybe spend time in prison and then turn to becoming more, more Pisces on the high end. But that's the logic. And so in that sense, every person can grow into their planets and express them better. Whatever the energy is, any sign, Aries, Taurus, Saturn, whatever. That's the logic. To express it better. And people do this anyway. If you look at a person's chart when they're in their 20s compared to when they're much older, they typically are doing the planets better and they're getting better results because their wisdom has expanded, right? And so then their transits aren't as difficult as they used to.
That's the theory.
Yeah, no, I know. And I mean, the counterpoint would be that, for example, yes, you could be wiser at, say, you're 50, 60 compared to 20, 30. But the problem is you're also aging. So then you get more, the body is slowly falling apart. So you're getting more problems that are unavoidable. But even then, it's up to you to preserve the body, to be disciplined enough not to just say, whatever, I'll just throw everything in there. If you do that, you're ensuring that things will get harder and harder. They're going to get harder anyway. Don't make it worse. That's my advice.
I know.
Yeah.
Because I'm older than you, Andre.
You are?
I'm older than everybody. I'm older than everybody. I'm 74.
Yeah, you look 10 years younger. Good for you. So you're obviously doing the thing you need to do.
My doctor, the last big physical I had, and I go at the end of this month, but they told me they'd gotten all my records together for the last 10 years. And she said, on the charts and looking at the blood tests and everything, I'm actually aging backwards.
There you go. Yeah, that's the target. I mean, all due respect to people who say that, paying attention to one's own health and well-being isn't important. I think that's just completely crazy. In my opinion, the thing you have that is most your responsibility is the state of your mind and body. That's it. Don't be talking about Pluto before you talk about basic things like what are you eating, how are you sleeping, are you resting, are you, these things are this is your vehicle, so you can, feel good and connect with the world, right?
It's the only way we can look at our charts. We have to keep ourselves wide awake and eyes open. By the way, you're in perfect sync right now, Andre. So apparently the trick is to stay on for 50 minutes and then you get perfectly in sync.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I'm determined to figure it out, because even though I mostly use Zoom and not StreamYard, but I want to figure out why StreamYard does these things, because it's mysterious. And again, I can't explain it. Nothing has changed here. Nothing. I haven't touched anything. But go figure. Now I'm in perfect sync, and I was completely out of sync.
I used to work with big databases and work with large computer data, the biggest database in the world at the time, which was the tariffs for airlines, for all the airlines. And I dug the information out of the one it's in Switzerland, is where they post to, and get it over to American Airlines where I worked. And I tell you, nothing made me more terrified than when the computer center says, we're going to do an upgrade. I mean, that was terrifying.
I know.
And it's terrifying in the micro, because whenever I get an upgrade on my computer, I turn it on and go, is it going to work? Is it going to work?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And that's the thing, is that it gets really complicated, because you have to be so on top of it and so knowledgeable to spot the updates that are actually causing problems, because they can cause programs not to work and all kinds of things. And many times they do it in the background unless you cut off the settings. But then if you do that, then you could get into security problems. It's difficult. I mean, the technology world, you really have to be on top of it. Let's just say that. And
well, that's why I have a computer security encryption specialist in the upper floors.
Wow. Well, there you go. You're lucky. I don't have one of those.
I know. I will ask them about this after we're off. I've got a couple things I want to show. One is, this is astrology classes with Andre, and he teaches self-empowerment and astrology. And go to his Patreon services at www.patreon.com. Andre Carr, and it's Kahr.
Yeah.
And he I'm sure your classes are absolutely wonderful. I'm just too old to sit through anything anymore. And then the other thing I want to show, The best is yod to come.
Oh my God. Well, you're really positive about everything here. The best is yet to come. All right. Well, we'll see.
Maybe my yod works out well because on my birth chart, it was pointing at Jupiter. And I know there are astrologers who have that theory that Jupiter is just a big gas cloud that promises a lot and doesn't deliver all that often. But I've always thought of Jupiter as a great big sort of Santa character out there in the stars. You know,
It is. No, Jupiter is great. And you also know that Pluto is going to visit that spot. It's going to land on there for a considerable length of time next year, the year after. So it's going to get worked over by Pluto. So you get to experience that. You know, Pluto will, in some manner, try to. It's funny you said upgrade. Maybe that's the word. It transforms the Jupiter, and Jupiter rules your second house. So then you start thinking resources, possibly whether it's money or talents. The second house meanings, Pluto going through there, and all of that happening, and you get to learn about the yod because you get a major transit for a significant period of time, and you can even do that Pluto. So the Pluto is going there. When that is happening, you find the months when it's most on, and it'll be large periods of time. Then the moon is going to keep triggering it, right?
right.
Over and over. So you get to study. This is how you learn astrology because
You look at what happens, look for the patterns.
exactly, you're right there on the spot, and you can say, "Oh, when the moon did that." And a lot of it, I noticed with me, is that it can be the event, you know, something obvious
Right.
where whatever it is. But other times it's just in consciousness. I'll make the connection. Oh, that's what this is. It just hits me, and then I can add it to the knowledge bank as something else that I didn't know before. And
That's why I keep the charts of a couple close friends that I kind of know most of the stuff that happens around them. And it's more intellectual curiosity. And are they going with the other flows of energy I feel around them? This is a question for you. And I think I know
No.
people, I know people who don't have yods. I know people who have 2 yods. Someone in the chat said she was told that she had 6 yods. She must have,
Oh, please send me that chart. I'd love to look at it.
okay, I will,
6 yods?
you
Oh
now
my
know
God.
how to get a hold of Andre, the lady who said that she had.
That's funny. If you have 6 yods, I mean, you're just you're a case study. That would be.
That sounds like a permanently locked on. You won the jackpot in Las Vegas.
The yod jackpot. Yeah, that's about it. Exactly. But I don't have any. I don't even have a 150, or I have sextiles. But so then I know, for example, from having sextiles, how you remember earlier you said, you know, Neptune and Pluto. So then you know it's late Leo. So I know where my yod trigger point is, and I can study it that way. But I don't have yods in the chart at all, or 150s, even a single 150, because many people don't have a yod but have a planet
right
in 150. Yeah, and this is why I'll notice why I bring up health. I notice that people that have, for example, Saturn 150 to the Sun, very frequently they bring up health as a thing. You know, health. What do I do? How do I improve it? Because the Saturn is in the yod. Right.
One of my friends that has 2 yods, the one that has 2 yods, has died twice on the operating room table, once with his lungs and once with his heart. And he keeps coming back, and he's one of those NDEs. It's like, why the hell did they send me back? I wanted to stay there. But he has some really interesting NDE experiences, and he's just an incredibly spiritual person, which if he would ever admit that, he'd probably get along with the world better. But we all pick our own path.
That's good though. That to me that's a classic interpretation of a yod, someone that has had near-death experiences. Exactly, because you're linking to the eighth house, Scorpio. So Scorpio is that. It's. I mean, astrologers don't make this stuff up. This stuff, these correlations are real. It's not. You don't just say, you know, to be cute. Pisces rules your feet. It rules your feet. Trust me, it does. And when you realize, the body parts and they're connected. And many other things like that, and including this, where, I mean, it's a pretty big topic. How many times do you meet someone that says, I've had near-death experiences? You know, it's unusual, right? But then you don't know what they'll do with it, too. One person might, the way you're describing it, this person says, I wish I had stayed there. Someone else will say, no, I needed to come back. It was imperative that I came back. A third person might say, it scared me, you know, witless, and I don't ever want to experience that again. There's a range, you know.
I know. And I'm amazed because I've been watching another channel that talks to a lot of people who've had NDEs, and we're going to cut this off, guys, because we're just hit an hour. But the guy does a great job of interviewing them, but they're all saying, "Oh, this happened to me in the late '60s, early '70s, and I didn't have anyone to talk to, and no one knew about it." And I can remember all the time when I was a teenager, people coming up and telling me about their NDEs.
Interesting. Yeah, but see that, but that could be your yod. See, that's the point, right? Okay, so you're a Scorpio rising,
Mm-hmm.
Taurus. So where's your Mercury?
Gemini.
Okay, in Gemini, but the yod was, wait, you told me it's Saturn,
My
Uranus.
yod was
Saturn is Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus.
Saturn, Uranus, and Aquarius. But my Mercury's in Gemini.
So Aquarius, so Aquarius, so Taurus, no, Scorpio, then it's Aquarius, Leo on top. So the eighth house is Gemini's Mercury. Yeah, maybe the Mercury has something to do with that. Why? But I mean, that's one of the things. But that's another manifestation of having a yacht. I think, the idea that it's not just you, just the environment around you, the life report of a person, saying.
Well, I had a woman come up to me in the grocery line, and she said, "I don't know why I want to tell you this." This was Patrick was born, so it was in the '90s. She came up and she said, "I don't know why I want to tell you this, but I think I want to kill myself." And I said, "Okay, why don't we go upstairs and have a cup of coffee?" Because it was a big, huge grocery store that had a diner thing in it. And I took her up there and I talked to her until I got a phone number for a family member to come help me with her, because I knew she didn't want to die or she never would have come up to me. But I had the store, I've been shopping in this store for over 20 years. I had one of the store employees call my husband and say, "Nancy's run into someone and it's going to be a while." And he was like, "Fine," because he was used to this kind of, not this particular situation. This was the most outstanding. But anyway, yeah, I always wanted to know where the little sign was on my forehead that she'll listen to anything.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you have dates, that's the bread and butter of astrology.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what's happening at the time, that I do this all the time now. It's natural to me to say, all right, what's happening, even though I'll still miss it, in that I'm not watching every single moment. And then sometimes the way it'll teach me is I find myself in the jam, so to speak, and okay, like I was just on vacation and I had a really difficult night when I couldn't sleep and I wasn't feeling well, and I saw the trigger. It was a moon trigger, to the sixth house, whatever. But I saw it afterwards rather than anticipating it, to potentially protect myself. But it's the same logic that if you can figure out, well, why did this come up? Maybe it was part of the yard, maybe not. But just having a yard, I think, would draw you to situations like that. Someone saying to you,
Well,
"I'm going to kill myself."
Yeah, well, she didn't. Her family actually called me 2 weeks later and said they'd gotten her help and she was moving along.
What just came into my mind is that someone with a yacht, for example, could have a job as in one of those suicide hotlines, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are calling, "I'm going to kill myself," and you're like, "Okay, wait, hold on, let's talk."
Closest I ever got to that was I was a business manager for one. I got its book straightened out. And then my friend with the 2 yods that we were talking about that's go to the moon, she worked there for 3 years at suicide prevention. Okay, folks, I promised Andre we've already had a traumatic day. I promised him an hour. Do you have anything you want to say in clothing, Andre?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I hope it was interesting for people. It sometimes can sound overly technical, but I try to make it as humanly practical as possible. But astrology, it does involve a lot of techniques and and measurements and so forth.
Yeah. And it's why people should kind of get to know an astrologer. If you don't know for sure you want to ever have your chart drawn, although probably most people here have. There are several online apps that you can go to. I like Astromatrix and Astro.com. Is there another one where someone can get just a good general birth chart?
Yeah, the site that I think is most how do I say this? It really is professional. He's doing
Mm-hmm.
Really, really good work. It may take you a little longer to figure it out, but it's
Mm-hmm.
called AstroSeek, Astro-Seek, and he's
Mm-hmm.
got all kinds of ways to, especially if you join it for free, then you can set up
Mm-hmm.
your birth chart, and it'll always be there as the main
Mm-hmm.
chart you'd be looking at. And he has all kinds of ways to measure, progressions, arcs. In fact, he recently, because what he does is he's a computer programmer, and he became aware of this Venus thing from Dagon Best, and he
Mm-hmm.
created the Venus cycles, so you can draw them. But again, though, with this, it's more for the pure study of astrology. If you're looking for sites where they give you interpretations, there may be better sites for that. If you're going to just
My
read.
favorite one to play with is astro.com because they have a whole lot of famous people's birth charts attached
Mhm.
to it. So you can say, who would I be most compatible with in romance and different things. Unfortunately, one time when I did that, Hitler came up as my best match. That was a little disconcerting.
Oh no! Oh no! By the way, as an aside, uh, Hitler had Venus retrograde, and that's what we're going in right now, Venus retrograde.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, this is again credit to Dagan Best. He said he studied it a lot, and he connects Venus retrograde to periods when the collective, the people, uh, become restless, and there is pushback. In other words, the consensus. Venus is like a consensus planet. This is what we all agree is the way to go, and then something will happen that enrages people or upsets them or whatever, and they push
Right.
back. And he had said, this was really well put, back in 2020, Venus was going to go retrograde in Gemini. And so he said, well, the American uh, Mars is in Gemini. It was actually being triggered too, but he said this could be police problems, police action. And that was the
Mm-hmm.
George Floyd. When George Floyd was
Yeah.
murdered, then the people hit the streets, during that Venus retrograde period. And now it's in Leo. Now, this one, though, this particular one, I don't know yet, other than that I see the writers were on strike, and now I think all the actors are going on strike. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you've noticed that we've lost, for the last few months, the comedians have disappeared because no one is writing for them. So I used to always tune into Stephen Colbert and Seth
Right.
Meyers. Well, they're not there. So that's been kind of extended. I don't know whether it'll be perhaps partly that, but I will tell you this Venus retrograde period is really, really linked to Trump's chart, because this is the 8-year return of when he went down the escalator. And it's now
Mm-hmm.
retrograding again in the same spot. The problem for him is now he's dealing with that yod
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't dealing with before. So, also in the context of everything happening to him, I interpret this as the brick wall, the 8-year
Mm-hmm.
brick wall, not the 8-year, I'm going to renew my thing and move up from here. To my mind, there's no moving up, but time will tell. We'll get to watch it, because Venus is basically retrograde until October, because by the time it leaves its shadow period, you're looking at early October. The whole time now it's going to be retrograde.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky. Anyway, goodbye, everybody. We had almost 100 people watching us, and we got 87 thumbs up. We should be very
Excellent.
proud.
All right. Great to hear it.
Okay, I'm going to end the broadcast, guys. Thank you all for being here. I really enjoyed it.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Great
Thank
to
you,
be
Andre,
here.
for coming.